So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're here at the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in Norwalk, Connecticut. And we're an organization that's 31 years old and dedicated to fine art printmaking with galleries, studios, a residency program, which is why we're here today, as well as teaching printmaking and doing outreach into the community. So as I mentioned, we also have this artist residency program for which artists apply from all over the world to come here for 1 to 2 weeks working on a project, either completely independently or with the help of some of our print staff. And towards the end, we always ask the artists to do a public talk so we can learn more about the project that they have done. So the last 2 weeks, we have had the pleasure of hosting Xinan Ran. She is here and will be in the gallery looking through some digital images and hearing about her body of work leading up to the present. And then afterwards, we'll also go upstairs to the workshop studio where there are printing plates and other pieces of the project that she's working on right now, including what she's done during her residency. So I will pass this on to Xinan to come up. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Xinan, and I have been the artist in residence in the past 2 weeks in college. I think today I'm going to present some of the work that's related to text, found text and reproduce text in different forms, and also an earlier iteration of this project that was done starting in 2025 last year. And so that will be around 25 to 30 minutes. And once I show you kind of the documentation of the past iteration, and then we will go upstairs and you will see some of the reference material, some of the historic objects and all that. And then also what I have 2 books lying around are kind of a super early version of when I started found text kind of practice that's very related to found text. So that's like the first part. I call this series Fagush. It's a Persian tradition where kind of an unwed woman will hide in a street corner and have a question about her question regarding marriage. And then whatever passersby's conversation becomes the answer to her questions. And this is called Fagush. It's like a practice, not really practice anymore, but people from Iran would know. And I found it to be an interesting way that I have been doing work in the past almost 10 years, kind of a version of a fortune hearing. Like I grew up in China until I was 17. I learned English starting 7-year-old, but really when I came to North America, I started to kind of learn my own version of English that is a collection of everything I hear and collect. And then that really became just my entire practice, where I keep this running list of everything I overheard from like YouTube, Amazon, eBay, overheard podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And then now, whenever I find something that's interesting, when I take them out of context, I'll record them in my notebook. And then I started this series where I will limroll my badge every day in my studio during that time for almost a year. And then the limroll sheet I pulled out of that roll was super beautiful. I was like, I really want to find a way to present this like very minute detail beauty. And then so I started to use a label maker and combining the found text with like different version of my limrolled sheets. And it started from, I don't even know why I did it, but I did it consistently for a year and a half. And it became this little book. So that's kind of the start of me being very aware that I'm recollaging, recontextualizing other people's language into my own, because I technically don't really own any English that I learned. And then that kind of expanded into other practices where I will still use the found text, but really find a different background, a different material, a different process to present these texts that I collected. And so I'll feel free to flip around. And then I want to show you two projects before I came to the current one, which is called Silk Compass. The first project is when after the Fagouche project, I start to, let's see. And my presentation is just images. There is no PowerPoint. Is this show I did where I created these kind of warning label that take the form of like a mattress tag or a closing warning, and created insulation out of them. So they were printed on Tyvek paper, which is like this very strong waterproof paper, and then they are usually insulation like this. This is a friend's apartment gallery. And then out of all these texts, I combined my font text source plus like whatever the format of these tags usually would be. And then they read like little poetry that like you will sometimes like sit on the toilet and stare at like the back of a shampoo bottle for very long. That is like kind of my interest in like creating these little moments of observation. So this one reads, "The reality does not mean the dream that you and I learned to live. We were promised something different, something better was supposed to be on the other side. Care should be exercised near oaths and promises, constant vigilance." So they kind of look like they came out of nowhere from the wall. And they are warning labels. And this is, I'll also read everything. "Under penalty of law, this tag not to be removed except by the consumer. All used material consisting of polyurethane foam 70% covered with nylon scrap fabric 10% zipper from the snake game, baptized with good old American beer, Calopagus, mancation, laughing water, even heavy, wet, Jesus juice." These were all the terms for beer in the 1910s in America. And then certification is made by the manufacturer that the material in this article is described in accordance with the Chinese workers' fantasy of America. Reduce, reuse, and re-USA, made in USA by a Chinese worker. So this was combined with like a series of soft sculpture work that I was making, and so all the product tags of this soft sculpture will have these labels. And I'll read the last tag. This is from a mattress tag, I think. "Warning, to avoid desensitization due to overstimulation, do not operate solely for the machine, do not rehearse acts of killing, do not stop when pain occurs, do not just buy it because everyone in the Facebook group has it, do not get separated from your people, do not stop when they stop, do not take everything to the afterlife, do not shout, no call, no cry, no hollow, no anything else. Do not remove, obscure this warning label. Do hatch me, do keep singing, do hold me, do help me form a union, do experience peak of pain, do buy a bag of loose eggs and back home, do stumble and get up." And then also kind of a trial that I was doing during that time, which is right after COVID, was this kind of series called TLC, which can be interpreted as tender loving care, but it's also a process that we were all very familiar during that time, which is the nose COVID test. You will like have this droplet on this paper, and the paper will blot into creating two lines. That is called thin layer chromatography, which is how all the testing paper are used for small tests. So instead, I started to use Sharpie with solvent, which is in this case acetone, to kind of dissolve Sharpie, and they will move towards where the solvent is spreading and creating these interesting patterned kind of ambience. And then I will, on top of it, will write in very faint graphite some of the text I collected. So this one is called Manager of Small Animals. This one is "She gave me love, I gave her my sword." And so these kind of is where the dot started, and then the acetone moved upwards and separating whatever dye that was in the pigment, in the dye. So these are kind of example. So kind of, this was like the reaction of like doing too many those tests, and then just, you spend a long time staring at it when you're waiting for it. So that is a kind of my reaction to that period. And then this piece is in Chinese. This English means, this is the way when my dad says he's really excited about something, he would say, there's a little rabbit in my heart. So this is like, I find it very endearing because it's like very out of character. This is ice as timer, and when we were taking the photo, there was a fly. Yeah, so these, and then another part of this work is I found every single documentations of, every single Wikipedia entry of a war since 0 AD, and then I arranged them in a giant Excel spreadsheet. So every single dot that you see in this row is when there's like a documented war happened since 0 AD. But it's like also interesting to think about when a war, one big war is separated into smaller war, like how do you define what is a war? And so this scroll is called the World of War. So like every time there's only a time tag. And then so these were like a poster sculpture I was making at the time. So that's like the first, like my time out of making just very plain text with a very flat surface. And then the next kind of iteration was I started to present text in a very larger area with stenciled letter. So I would like have a laser cutted plastic stencil, and I'll put loose soil over them and then take the text out, stencil out, and you will have a text. That was a project I did between 2021 to 2022 for about 40 times. So I'll go to a random place in the public space in Brooklyn or in Manhattan, and I'll do a line of text and I'll document it with a very long selfie stick, and I will leave. So after doing that project for a whole year, my ambition grew in a way that I really want to make those texts bigger, in a way that maybe you can see them from Google Earth, or maybe the text does not just being loose soil, they can be something more sculptural that lasts more than 4 hours. So I got an opportunity to do a project in this sculpture park in Syracuse called Stone Quarry Art Park. It's in middle of nowhere, Syracuse, but it's a really cool place. So I proposed to them that I really want to create these texts instead of being like 10 inches, I want to be 6 feet in the long side. And this was like a maquette that I presented to them. It was very ambitious, it didn't happen to be like this. But the goal was to think about like different layers of viewing for this piece of work. So instead of just being someone that will encounter them when they are in the park, it can be something that you can view in Google Earth, or I have my very long selfie stick that you can see them in a kind of a selfie but giant, and another version is that you can see them from drones. So the size of all these proposed letter, was literally based on the size of this car in this map. I was like, if you can see that car, you can see my text. So basically, every single letter is the scale of that car. And then this is like, during that time in 2024 was the most ambitious project I proposed. And I had a budget to make it, but the budget really wasn't sufficient to cover everything. So the goal of the project was to, how can I save the most amount of money to make sculpture out of soil that can stay for a long time. So the solution was to make rammed earth sculpture. So rammed earth is a process to make adobe. So you pound it very tightly, soil that's rich in clay, and then and it potentially can stay outside for a long time with proper coverage. And then to make those giant leather molds, I need to make the leather. And the money-saving solution was to, instead of making 26 molds, one of each kind, I, in a way, simplify the alphabet, or like transform the 26-letter alphabet into 8 master modes. So by combining different portions of a letter, you can get the entire alphabet. So for example, this is the one I like to use the most. So you will see an A here, you will see a G. If you flip this, this is an R, but it's also a D. If you flip it, it's a P, it's a Q. If you flip it, it's a B. So this letter literally can do 7 or 8 different texts. And then for this mode, it's a J, it's an I. If you flip it, it's a T, and there's another one. There's an F. So then I start to like research how to do these mode in a cost-saving and easy to transport version. This one is R and N and an H. But if you take these 2 cover off, you can make M out of it. And I asked around, the original idea was to do CNC cut wood throughout, but then it became too heavy and too expensive. The solution then become making them out of purple foam, like a very high density foam that at that time I was cutting in the backyard with my dad, who was visiting at the time. So these are purple high density foam that I glued in between. This is a giant hot wire that you can just pass through these foam and it cuts like butter. And at that time I had like a very big backyard. So we cut the entire, there were 4 sheets of this out of 4x8 purple foam. And then we covered them, just rolled in like a paper, in clear plastic tape into all these modes. Then they become the puzzle that my collaborator and I were able to create in the lab. So this is the barn area where all the leather was saved. We also did a jar test for the soil content, and it was like a perfect 30% clay. So we didn't really need to buy anything. We just need to buy lime to help with the solidification. And then this is our first R, and I can show you more process images. So every single marker you see at the time, they're all numbers, so we will know which one meets which. And then there are wood on top of the purple foam to help with clamping. And then we just hand shovel soil and tamp them for 2 weeks straight. And this is our G. Yeah, the G was really, really difficult. And there was a lot of like last minute solution and quick problem solving. It was really fun. And then when it ends up finished, it's usually 3 to 4 inches of rammed earth structure that's above the grass. And when it dries, it's almost like after you dry a ceramic piece for 2 days, it's like cool to the touch, a little bit moist. It has a very hard body. And we just left it. And then I have a 32 feet long selfie stick that like it looks like a fishing stick. My parents brought it when they visited. And it telescoped down to like about this long. So every time I pass security, TSA is very interested. So the first piece we did was Wing Woman. It's a play on words of wingman. I keep thinking about how the birds in the sculpture park is in a way winged female. So a wing woman is sort of it was located in the entrance of the park, so when people drive in, they will sort of be able to see it. And in 2 weeks, we were able to do 3 different texts One is wing woman, one is worrying and wandering, and then the third one is hurry. Yeah. Oh, this is a pessimistic.
This is really funny.
There's something about like fishing with the sky, fighting, like, putting a flag on things, and it's very entertaining. I bring them everywhere that I want conversation, but I'm too lazy to, or I'm not good at talking to people sometimes, and people come to me. And then and also there's another artist in the park that was working with drones. So Laura, took these images for me from her drone. So this is about a month after it was done in 2024.
No, where was that again?
Syracuse.
Syracuse.
Yeah, it's a sculpture park that has been running with public art that's been making for the past 20, 30 years. So you were just walking their property and you were running to things. And then the beautiful thing is like the first snow that happened, they sent me this photo. So nobody has touched it. It's because rammed earth structure have very good heat retention rate. So it is slightly warmer than the grass around it. So it actually melts itself. And then because the sunlight shine on this black structure, it absorb more heat and start to melt everything more. So like it stayed like this, exposed for a long time. And this was made in 2024. And this is a photo from last year. 2020, when did I do it? After a whole year, the structure was completely open and it sort of kept its shape. There are a little bit of moss grow on it, but because the soil was so compact, most of the plants can't really grow on them. So that's the second project I did that's kind of related to text. Ooh. And then I can talk more about my current project, which for the CCP residency, I propose to do a second version of it. Make it bigger. So I became really interested in working with found objects, and then I discovered eBay. There's so many things on eBay that are sort of super precious, but people usually will disregard it or it doesn't have any collector value. So one time I was just searching around and found this map that I bought for like $35. And it turns out to be a genuine 1941 Second World War map that's made out of fabric. And it was created by the Army Map Service at that time. And it actually depicts a part of northern China that I was born. So I was born in the previously called Manchuria. And I grew up there until I was 4, and then my whole family moved to the south. I saw this and I couldn't believe my eyes, because even though I'm from there, there was no kind of documentation of Manchuria being a thing, because it's sort of the terrible history that China has experienced in the past, and the entire northern China's attitude towards Japan is completely like going against it because of Japanese invasion. So to be able to see like it's sold as a commodity on eBay was mind-blowing. And I bought it without even knowing what I want to do, and then I was doing a different residency at the time, and then I happened to be situated in a print shop. I was like, I really want to make reproductions. So then it became the project. And an even more interesting thing is when I was planning for this residency and started to buy a little bit more maps on eBay, one of the maps I bought included this original letter from the 70s. So it says, these survival maps are the same map carried by Army, Navy, and Marine Corps pilot during the war. They were prepared by the Army, the Hydrographic Office, and other agencies. All are printed on silk or nylon, so that long exposure to salt water will not harm them. Also, it's quiet when you open them, so it's not like a paper map that makes sound. Every pilot on a combat flight carried as many of these maps as was necessary to cover the area he was to fly over. Then if he was shut down over the water, the map gave him wind and current information from which he could plan his attempt to get home. If he was shut down over the land and the map showed him what he could expect in the way of roads and towns, while his pre-flight briefing told him where the enemy was. We hope you, our guests, will never have occasion to use this map for survival. However, we thought you might like a souvenir of your visit to the Shangri-La. We also have heard that the ladies sometimes like them as kerchiefs. So it's like original ledger that somehow the eBay seller included in my purchase. And it was a very interesting object to receive, surprisingly, because thinking about just within 30 years after the war, people's impression or memory of what that war was has already the storytelling of this object being an important part of the thing. And it's very kind of mystified or exaggerated, because actually some of these maps, as I explored in this project, especially this one, is extremely inaccurate. And how thinking about the promises of war is being a completely fabricated reality, and how within 3 decades after the war, people's fantasy about the war really kind of give me an interesting perspective of the suffering was kind of not remembered. And then so for this project, I had a printing press with me, and I was I love doing etching. I want to make etching, but at that time I also copper is so expensive. I want to make a lot of prints, but I don't really have the facility to have a lot of plates. What can I use to make etching instead of copper? And then I thought of this. This is a PCB plate. So to make circuit boards, the circuit board in the earlier version were a layer of plastic, and you either have one side or double-sided copper laminates on both sides of them. And then you would do prints of circuits on top of them. You will see some upstairs. But then I was maybe I can etch that copper and make a print. So I bought a ton of very cheaply made copper PCB boards, and then start to experiment with etching them. So this, and then everything I did during that time came to be a show in Manhattan last year. And this is the first image you will see, which in my mind helped to explain how the work was made in this show. So on the top were a print, so you can only read the text when you read the print, but the bottom is sort of as an object, because the text is, it can be read directly on the plate. So I kind of want to create that connection of how texts are being presented in different forms as object or as print. And then in addition to that I also created 2 giant oversized silk map that depict Arctic at different times. So one is 15th century Dutch explorers version of map, where you will see sea monsters depicting area that's unknown to people at the time. And then I did another map, which is, you will see the original reference upstairs. It's a 1951 map of the Arctic that's done on the same fabric map. That's depicting the North Pole in the center and Soviet Union in the north, and Canada, Greenland in the south. So it's a show that's very heavily on different aspects of map, and really doing a close reading on moments of this map that can show discrepancy or false promises of who they are. And then especially this one, I probably have an image bigger later. And then there are 3 different prints of that Manchurian map that I scanned the map and then printed them to display this word Manchuria at different scale. So this is the first one, which includes 5 different plates, I think. So it's 5 different layers of PCB plates all ink with different color on top of each other and printed. And then the second version, which shows this lake, which this is a lake I grew up knowing because that's like the lake where people can get fishing. And that's like kind of my anchor point in finding out where my hometown is. And then the third one is like just like a more closer look into you don't really see the Manchuria, so like they give you some time of pause when you look at this work. And this one has 7 different plates of PCB. And during this time, the copper laminate actually is super, super thin. So it's very impossible to actually make prints. During this residency, I really was able to improve that by doing electroplating. But this was extremely difficult. I started with 10 plates, I ended with 4. 10 version. Yeah, you will see. And then yeah, there are other presence of text and images, sort of imagining the entire exhibition space as a giant map. So sometimes there are keys, sometimes there are legends in different interpretation. I'm also taking quotes from like writers about knowledge and knowing. And then the legend of the map is like literally vinyl on the floor. So thinking about the entire room as a little puzzle. And then we came to, and then I think it's good that we go upstairs. So in this residency, what I proposed in the first place was to first electroplating the PCB plate. So in a way, there will be more copper for the acid to etch into. And then the more, especially when I know I'm coming here, I was like, what if instead of buying like plain plates from Amazon, I use another device that's related to wayfinding, which in this case is GPS devices. So what I did is I bought 45 broken GPS devices on eBay, and I took apart every single component until there's only the plate left. And then I sanded the plate, electroplating the plate with copper. And my plan originally was to be able to create etching out of those plates. But during this time, I wasn't able to do it for some reason. So it's like a project continuing to be done. But my goal is to be able to eventually find a way to to acid etch the PCB plates that you can print and see both the circuit board and also the plate. So that's a plan to be happening. And yeah, and what else I did? And then in this iteration that I made 4 prints out of etching this time, and you can see them all upstairs. I take references from 2 different sources. One is the Greenland Camp Century camp that was created between the 60s and in the 60s and early 70s. It's like a military camp, scientific research camp, where the entire camp is under the ice. They were trying to explore ways to kind of dig tunnels under ice and also hide nuclear facilities there. So I found on eBay correspondence letters during that time, which I scanned, copied, and then printed part of that. So some of them are the stamps, some of them are actual letters from a son to his father, who mentioned he's making this documentary about City on the Ice. And then another component is, you will see this little booklet called Stamp Cancels. It's like when you put a stamp on a letter, to make it useless, they have to put a stamp over it to mark it's no longer useless, it's no longer useful. So I was making the case of like targeting these 2 attempts during the Cold War as US propaganda effort into influence each other, influence their people nationally and internationally. One thing I forgot to mention is, so that this camp in Greenland was built while they have a television crew with colored film the entire time documenting the entire process as a attempt to respond to like the Russian Sputnik satellite, because they went up first, and so the US was like, let's find our technology that can go against them. So their attempt was like to hide nuclear weapon under the ground so they can fight. So that was called Project Iceworm. That was like a secret project in their Camp Century. So thinking about finding a documentary crew's member's letter to his dad mentioning this film, I think it's like, it's a beautiful story. Anyway, so when you go upstairs, you will see some of these materials. You will see the prints I made, previous plates. And I'm also, in a way, interested in continuing this project, in doing more research in any of the area that I mentioned. So if you have any leads or interests or history, or like where I should go, the museum I should go, please let me know. And this is a project that needs to be continued in some way, in the way that I think, to be able to treat these found objects as material for art is very interesting. That's it.
Thank you.